The hashtag, of course, is business today. We will be sampling that conversation as the show does go on. Indeed, again, I do tell you, welcome. We, of course, want to start off here with the markets. You can see that is scrolling behind me here on the floor. And take a look at what exactly the various counters have been going through so far. And to bring you up to speed on what exactly the conversation has been, the top movers today so far, as usual, of course, Safaricom, but today Equity Bank at 4.70 million shares moved so far. Safaricom at 1.19 million and CFC at 1.78 and KCB at 1.54 million. While Cooperative Bank has so far moved some 1.33 million shares in trading thus far. Of course, it being just after 3 o'clock, we should expect that the market has indeed come to a close, and the statistics should be coming to us later on in the day, the closing numbers. Well, some of the counters, as you can see behind me, NIC having so far moved about 67 shares in that one trade which flashed before you just there. Now, top gainers of the day include Uchumi at 3 shillings 90 cents, up 9.86%. Diamond Trust Bank 5.56%, up at 190 shillings, while CIC is up 5.41% at 5 shillings and 85 cents, while Home Africa has traded 5% up at 1 shilling and 5 cents. Now, losers of the day include Express Kenya, Olympia Capital Holdings, Nairobi Business Ventures, and Samir, all down 9.88%, 8.93%, 8.70%, and 7.14% respectively. Well, before we go on, to give you a perspective of just how the shilling is performing so far against the various currencies, and well, trading against the US dollar at an average of 103.23 shillings, while going for 133.74 against the sterling pound, while against the euro it is trading at about 122.87%. Of course, the shilling having recently stabilized after having taken a beating over the weekend and just before that because of the ruling that came out of the Supreme Court. Well, let's get down to the detail of it. The man behind a lot of these numbers is with me here in studio. Kuria Waithaka is the Director for Legal and Corporate Affairs here at the NSC, and he's an expert on just what exactly these numbers mean here today. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Now, first off, the fact that for most Kenyans, the news that they mostly remember about the NSC is the sort of nosedive it took last week. Maybe just to, in a layman's way, what exactly happened and why did it happen?
Okay, thank you, and welcome to the Nairobi Securities Exchange.
Thank you very much.
Glad to host you here.
Yes.
So, what's been happening is that, of course, we've been watching the market over the course of the year, since this was literally been a campaign year, an election year in year.
Yes.
And you'd expect that there would be ramifications because of that. So we've been watching the market, and we do it through the use of what we call the indexes, or the indices. And we monitor the indices depending on the stocks, how the performance of the stocks. You believe it or not, the indices have been performing pretty well since January. We have the NSC 20 share index, which was at 3206 points as of January, and has been on an upward trajectory over the course of the year, actually even till last month.
Wow.
Hitting what we call a psychological 4,000 points mark sometime. So interesting, the market has been resilient over the months, with the indices being pretty good, equity turnover not being bad as well.
Yes.
Then we come to, last week was, September the 1st?
Yes.
Yes, when we had the Supreme Court decision.
Yes.
Now, it's noteworthy that a lot of the participation in our market is foreign investors, dominated, at between 60 and 70%.
Yes.
And which again shows confidence in our market.
By the entire globe.
Yes. So one of the things about investors is like they like certainty, they like especially political certainty, civil certainty in an organization, in a country, a stable economy with the various macros in place. Now, I think this ruling did catch a number of investors off guard in terms of the pricing of what I call the political risk.
Yes.
And they were holding on to a number of stocks, especially the large counters, large caps. And there was some heightened, there's some increased activity, especially on the sell side.
Yes.
On Friday, immediately after the decision. And what that happened is that we had depressed prices.
Yes.
Prices came down to depressed levels. And we do have at the NSE a control measure, which we call a circuit breaker,
yes,
that the market must not go below 10% at any one point in time.
And just to stop you right there, because for many people it seems strange that during the electioneering period, usually the market tends to track downwards. The indices all shed, at some times going below the 3,000, which is a threshold for many, a sort of psychological thing.
Yes.
But we kept seeing an uptick. Even when there was a hiccup, it would recover and come back up. Then all of a sudden the bottom falls out, and there's so much red ink,
yes,
a lot of selling. Could it be that a lot of we don't have the liquidity to be able to absorb these sales, despite the fact that these shares are doing quite well in most cases?
In terms of liquidity, yeah, I think there's good liquidity, but yes, there could be better liquidity. And in fact, one of the initiatives that's been undertaken by some of the key capital market stakeholders is liquidity, yes, enhancers, like market making rules, which we already have in place under the ETF framework.
Yes.
As well, we'll be looking at securities lending and borrowing, which will also increase the level of liquidity. Having said that, I said, yes, there was a lot of a lot of the shares in the stocks of
yes,
in the hands of foreigners, yes, and I think this decision did catch a number of people off guard and did not quite know, I said, how to price it.
Yes.
And as such, there was quite a bit of sale activity. Once we had the circuit breaker in place for about, yes, half an hour only, it was just half an hour. Yes. I know there have been reports of the Kenyan market crashing, which was actually, yes, not accurate.
Not accurate.
It was, yes, accurate. It's just that, yes, the prices were depressed. After the circuit breaker, the market stabilized. Okay. And in fact, when you survey investors, that's a point now to come in and mop up. So there were many sell orders, yes, but they're not
it actually becomes a buy market, because a lot of people, they were able, yes, to start picking up these shares at what they would consider a discount. Hold that thought, okay, because we now want to move on to something else, but we will be coming back at you with the same conversation, especially because for most people, they want to understand, when you say this is a buy market, what exactly does that mean, and what exactly, how long are they expected to hold on to those shares, and